Hello, my name is Jerzy Zito, and although my major is currently undecided, I will be explaining the history of political science. By definition, political science is the systematic study of governance by the application of empirical and generally scientific methods of analysis. What this means is that it is the analysis of political activity and behavior. Political science has no one career path. A political science major could do anything from business management to working on a political campaign, according to Professor Robert Alexander.
I could name, 20 students in the last few years that are doing 20 different things.
Poli-sci, as it is often abbreviated, has been studied and practiced for centuries. Dating back to 400 BC, political science was first introduced by ancient thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle. Critical thinking and political analysis were present in ancient cultures through the works of thinkers such as Confucius. Political thinking was present all across the globe. It was commonly discussed in China and India. Writings by the historian Ibn Khaldun of North Africa also played an important role in introducing the study of politics to the Arabic-speaking world. The idea of political science spread the quickest and most effectively in the West through the works of Plato and Aristotle. Some see Plato as the first political scientist, though most consider Aristotle to be the discipline's true founder. Aristotle introduced empirical observation into the study of politics and used 158 Greek city-states to create a typology of political systems and determine whether or not he believed these states were corrupt or legitimate. He believed that democracy was the worst form of government. Ironically, Aristotle argued that the best form was a polity, which was ultimately an efficient, stable democracy. Plato and Aristotle worked together to create the polis, which was a term used by the Greeks to represent both their society and political system. However, just then Alexander the Great began his conquest of the Mediterranean. After his death, his empire was divided among his generals, and as a result, new political forms were introduced. Society and politics were now seen as separate. Due to the split, a new comprehension of politics was needed. Hellenistic thinkers such as the Stoics, a school of philosophy that focused on the idea that virtue was based on knowledge, introduced the idea of natural law. Natural law had an equal effect on all humans and as a result became the basis of Roman legalism and Christian notions of equality. This eventually caused tension for the Christians as they had ultimate faith in God and the heavenly city. Because of this, there was a growing disdain for politics. For centuries, the words of Aristotle were lost in Europe. Arab philosophers such as Al-Farabi and Averroes preserved the teachings of Aristotle, and they eventually made their way back to Europe through Spain around 1200. Politics and political forms of government continued to be debated in Europe during the following centuries. Up until the 1400s, political science was less of a devotion and more just an idea. Thinkers considered politics often, but there had not yet been a man to truly devote himself to the study. That was until Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli was an Italian writer most famous for his book The Prince, which he wrote in 1531 and dedicated to all future princes. This book gave advice on how a prince should rule and the best ways to maintain political power. Machiavelli's political philosophy was built on reason rather than religion. He introduced the modern idea of power, how to get it and how to use it. This theory is still used today. Machiavelli is often given the title of the first political scientist alongside Aristotle. At this point, political science was much more commonly studied. One of the most famous philosophers and leading Enlightenment thinkers was Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes wrote Leviathan, his book, in 1651 towards the end of the English Civil Wars. In this piece, Hobbes explained that all humans contained a natural right of self-preservation and defined the idea of a social contract, which was an unspoken agreement between the citizens and leaders in a society that outlined the rights and duties of each. John Locke was another Enlightenment thinker and English philosopher that argued in favor of a social contract. Locke believed that the placement of a social contract helped to ensure every man's right to life, liberty, and property. He also believed that any government that failed to uphold their duties under the social contract should rightfully be overthrown. This was one of the founding ideas of the American Revolution. Jean-Jacques Rousseau had additional thoughts in his own version of a social contract. He believed that the individual wills of the people in a society were combined to make a general will. The general will was ultimately more important than the individual wills, making each man free. Similar ideas continued to spread and change with the help of other important philosophers. Montesquieu of France first introduced the separation of powers along with checks and balances. English parliamentarian Edmund Burke also had ideas about politics. Burke introduced an important psychological or cultural insight, that political systems are living organisms that grow over centuries. Political science was also influenced early on by law. A French political philosopher, Jean Bodin, invented a theory of sovereignty. He believed that the state was the ultimate source of law in a territory. This theory is still widely respected and is used today to help determine the legitimacy and equality of states. With growing attraction to the natural sciences came the creation of a new social science. In the 1830s, French philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville began to analyze American democracy. He argued that American democracy worked so well because Americans mastered the art of association and were group formers. On the other side of the spectrum, German socialist Karl Marx believed that the state had ultimate domination by the classes that own the means of production. He argued that values and culture were nothing more than a reflection of the tastes of the ruling elites. These became two distinct lines that divide poli-sci. After centuries of study and practical application, the first school of political science was established in 1872 in France. In 1895, the London School of Economics and Political Science was founded in England, and the first chair of politics was established at the University of Oxford in 1912. Political science as a study and major has continued to expand ever since. In the words of Student Senate President and political science major Harrison Zeller,
well, political science is really important because it shows trends, and it also is kind of the underpinning part of our democracy, because we don't know why things are happening, and it's just kind of chaos.
Political science allows every person to take an active role in government and politics. Political science also urges us to think critically and intelligently.
Studying that to me has been relevant in understanding, I think, in better understanding the world and taking an interest in social issues, political issues, that with a critical eye. So I think I think there's the benefit in studying that.
Said Jerzy Zito, a graduate with a political science degree. So as you can see, political science is a great field of study with a wide variety of career paths and a rich history.